We've completed the analysis of changing equilibrium from the demand side. We're going to shift our focus over to the supply side. It is important for this part for you to remember what were the determinants of supply. And as we discussed previously, determinants of supply are the cost of doing business, whether it's wages, cost of capital, uh, any changes in taxes or regulation. All of those will impact the supply side. So what we're going to take a look at first here is we're going to take a look at what happens on the supply side and what happens to equilibrium if we see an increase in wages. If there's an increase in wages, the supply curve will shift to the left. All right, so here is our original supply curve. If we draw in a new supply curve, and let's draw that in there. So here is our new supply curve, and let's label that. S1 actually. So here's our new supply curve. Let me make that the same font size as the other supply curve. So here is our original supply curve, and here is the new supply curve. Let me group those together. So when there's an increase in wages, the supply curve will shift from here to here. And the new equilibrium will be where the new supply curve intersects the original demand curve. So this is the point right here. And let me draw in that. So if we go from this point where the new supply curve intersects the original demand curve, if I go from that point straight across, that gives us the new equilibrium price. And if I go from the equilibrium point straight down, that will give me the new equilibrium quantity. So let me change this from QE to Q0 to indicate that this is our original equilibrium price, and let me change PE to P0, so that's the original price and quantity. Here is our new quantity, so here is Q1. And this is P1. So what do we end up seeing? That we see that because of an increase in wages, the supply curve shifts to the left. Let me draw a little arrow in so you can see that. So supply curve shifts to the left, and our new equilibrium, price and quantity, we highlight these and group these together. That gives us the new equilibrium price and quantity. So what do we end up seeing for the price of that product? We see that the price increases. Supply curve shifting to the left drives the price up, and it drives the equilibrium quantity down. So what we had is, here's our original equilibrium quantity with the original supply and demand curves. The increase in wages causes supply in this industry to shift to the left to this new supply curve, and the new equilibrium occurs here. So we see that the original price is here, the price goes up to here, and the original quantity is here, and now it goes down to this. So make sure you remember, number one, what the determinants of supply are, because if you know what the determinants of supply are, if any of those change, you know the supply curve is shifting in either direction. But also realize where the direction of that shift should be. With an increase in wages, supply curve shifts to the left. So here's our new supply curve, which drives up the price of this product and drives down the equilibrium quantity. For a decrease in wages, the opposite will occur. So let me get rid of these. If we decrease wages, the supply curve will shift to the right. So let me draw in that new supply curve to indicate that there is a decrease in wages. So with a decrease in wages, the supply curve will shift to the right. So here is our new supply curve. Let me call it S1. And let me make that a subscript. So the supply curve shifts outward. And let me draw that in. So we see that the supply curve shifts to the right. And the new equilibrium occurs. Let me keep this consistent with the dotted lines. Supply curve shifts to the right because of the decrease in wages, and we now have a new equilibrium in the marketplace. So if we go from where the new supply curve intersects the original demand curve, that is our new equilibrium quantity. And if we go from the intersection of the new supply curve and the original demand curve, that gives us our new price. So here is P1. And this is Q1. So what do we end up seeing? That when wages decrease, the supply curve shifts to the right. This drives the price of that product downward and increases the quantity, the equilibrium quantity in the marketplace. So just realize that when you have a decrease in wages or if you're decreasing any of the costs, for example, if I decrease the cost of capital, the supply curve will shift to the right. This will lower the price of that particular product and increase the equilibrium quantity. Same thing, for example, if I decrease the amount of regulation and the cost of regulation, this will cause the supply curve to shift outward, and it will cause the price to fall, the equilibrium price to fall, and the equilibrium quantity to increase. Same thing for taxes. If I were to decrease taxes, the supply curve would shift from here to here, and we would have a new equilibrium price where the price is lower and we have an equilibrium quantity that is higher. All right, so make sure you're comfortable with that. Make sure you're comfortable with both components, the determinants of demand. When they change, how does that cause the demand curve to change, and how does that impact the equilibrium price and quantity? Also, make sure you remember what the determinants of supply are and how that's going to cause the supply curve to shift and how that impacts the, uh, the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity.